Hi folks, in this video we're going to be looking at painting trees and branches often seen as decoration on Warhammer 40,000 and Age of Sigmar bases. So without any further ado, let's cue the music. To start out, I'm going to apply an even base coat of charred brown from Vallejo Game Colour all over the base and the texture paint that I've applied and the tree or branches decorations on this base. I have thinned this down roughly 1:1 with water, and I'd recommend applying this in multiple thin coats until you get a nice smooth finish on the base. Once dried, the branch and the ground texture should look something like this. Next, I'll be looking to apply a base coat to any vegetation that might be hanging off the tree. This might be leaves, vines, creepers, that sort of thing. And to do this, I'm going to give it a base coat of Loren Forest from Games Workshop. Just like in the previous step, when applying the brown over the wood and the ground textures, I've thinned this down with a little bit of water so that I can apply this in smooth, even coats to get a solid finish. As an optional additional step, I'm then thinning the Loren Forest quite heavily down with water, almost to a wash consistency. I'm then going to apply this all over the branch to allow the branch to have a nice green tint to it, as if there's layers of moss or bits of lichen growing onto the bark. At this scale, a green wash often does the trick to represent that. Once this is dried, this leaves behind a really subtle effect, but I quite like it. If you don't fancy doing this, you can also use a green wash such as a Thonian camo shade, or you could skip this step entirely. It is entirely up to you. Our next step is to start adding some highlights and some different colours into the wood. And to do this, I'm coming in with some Mournfang brown from Games Workshop, and I'm starting to pick out the raised areas and the upper surfaces where the light would hit. I'm trying to be careful not to do too much of a heavy layer with this as to not obscure the charred brown and the green wash that we've done in our previous steps. I'd recommend doing a little bit at a time with this, covering a bit of an area, seeing how you find that it looks, and then going back and adding more if you want to. This is really a step where you want to be careful and apply a little at a time so you can really control that transition of colour. The next step, and the final step in painting the wood, is to add some Gorthor browns and pick out some final highlights. This is a really nice colour, and it allows us to have some nice contrasting tones between the Mournfang brown and the charred brown. You can experiment with different wood colours. If you want to go a straight up highlight from the Mournfang brown, you could use Scrag brown instead of the Gorthor brown in this step. It all depends on the type of wood you want to do. For the last painting step, I'm going to be adding a touch of Elysian green onto the little vines that are hanging down from this branch, and I'm applying this on the raised areas, leaving the previous Loren Forest into the shadows. It doesn't have to be much, just enough to provide a point of interest when looking at these vines. The last step that we'll be doing with this tutorial is to add some Mossy Growths onto the branch that we have on this base. And to put down a fixing agent for that, I'm placing some PVA glue onto the base and onto the branch, as I'm going to do a bit of the mossy effects onto the base as well. And it doesn't really matter what PVA glue you use, grab your favourite sort and get some sort of spreader or an old paintbrush or a toothpick and gently apply some onto the base and onto the tree. The next step is a little messy, but we'll be using some green blend turf from Woodland Scenics. And what we'll be doing is we'll take a pinch of this and gently sprinkle it over the areas that you've got the PVA glue. This is a foam product that will very easily stick to the PVA, and once it's stuck down, you can give the base a tap to get rid of the excess, and will leave a really nice mossy vegetation growth-like finish onto your bases and onto your branches and trees. And as you can see, once it's been tapped off, it leaves a really nice vegetative mossy growth-like appearance, and does a lot to sell the effect of this being an old woodland tree branch. And with that, this fallen woodland branch is now complete. If you enjoyed this video, why not consider subscribing? It's free of charge. It helps me out letting you know what content you'd like to see on this channel. So, until next time, folks.